Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick and this is our first run review of the Asics Metaspeed Ray. So the Metaspeed Ray is an all-new addition to Asics' lineup of carbon plate racing shoes. It launched in Tokyo earlier this year, where I did a short video after a 5k run in it, but it is now going on full release soon, and it is the most expensive part of the Asics Metaspeed range, sitting above the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo and Edge Tokyo. It costs £265 or $300. It is absurdly lightweight, and this is the real key star feature of the Metaspeed Ray is just how unbelievably light it is. In my UK size 9, which is a US 10, it weighs just 136 grams, which is 4.8 ounces. That's the lightest carbon plate racing shoe. I think it's the lightest shoe of any type I've ever tested, and that lightness is achieved by the whole design really being as stripped back as possible. You still got, though, a full stack height here. It does go right up against that limit set by World Athletics. It's 39.5mm at the heel and 34.5 at the forefoot for a 5mm drop, which is the same as you're getting on things like the Edge Tokyo and Sky Tokyo. So as I say, every part of the design is built to be as lightweight as possible. That's certainly true of the Matrix upper, which is a real featherlight upper, almost see-through, incredibly thin. You're not really getting any kind of support around the heel or anything like that. There is a smidge of padding at the top of the Achilles there, but really it's all designed to be as stripped back as possible, as you'd expect. Then the midsole is entirely made of Asics' new FF Leap foam. This is the soft, squishy, very lightweight foam that's also being used on the Edge Tokyo and Sky Tokyo, but those are dual density midsoles where they have a layer of FF Leap alongside FF Turbo Plus. In the Metaspeed Ray, it is all FF Leap. It's the entire midsole, and you also don't have a full-length carbon plate, which is another way that Asics has reduced the weight of this shoe. It's more just a plate that sits under the forefoot, runs back into the midfoot, but you're not really getting anything under the heel here. Then, continuing the very light theme, you've got a really minimal upper, just a touch of rubber at the back of the shoe here, a fair bit more around the forefoot, but loads of exposed foam here. This is not going to be a durable shoe, I think it's fair to say. What you're getting here is a very lightweight shoe focused purely on performance. It's all about running fast times, not necessarily lasting a long time.
So in terms of fit, I would definitely say this is a shoe that's not giving you a huge amount of space to play with. That's probably no massive surprise given it is very much a racing focused shoe. Now I've got mine in a UK size 8. That is my typical running shoe size. As you can probably see from here, it's a very thin, light upper. This shoe is, the kind of big story here is really about the overall weight you're getting here. And what it does make it quite a tricky shoe to get on. There's not a lot of structure in that upper, and I have found it quite challenging to put on. Most of the padding is reserved for the back of the heel here. It's not a huge amount, but definitely just giving you a little bit of that comfort and support there, and hopefully not getting any irritation when you get it on. The space up front of the toe box is not a huge amount there, just enough, but I would say might be question marks personally whether this is going to be a shoe that I'm particularly going to want to run longer distances in. Maybe that might be a reason to go half size up in this shoe, but yeah, just definitely is a very kind of very close, kind of low volume, locked in feel. The laces and the tongue, you've got this kind of gusseted tongue, and these laces from the kind of other Metaspeed shoes, which I don't absolutely love. Takes a little bit of work, extra work, I would say, to kind of get a good lockdown. I did find in my kind of first run in it that gusseted tongue did move about, so that is something you're going to have to play with before you get out in this shoe. So initial takeaways from that fit is that it's a very low volume but a thin and light kind of fit overall. I think if you've got slightly wider feet, you might feel that it's going to be quite snug in general, so that's something to keep in mind, I think, when looking at the Metaspeed Ray.
Quick word on fit then. I'm running in my regular size in Asics, which is UK 8.5, US 9.5. What you can see here when you first put them on, there's a good amount of clearance. You could literally see the clearance towards the end of the toe box there. There's, this orange suede that you can see here. I mean, those are my toes, my white sock toes. You can see how much clearance there is there. It's all quite sort of snug, and narrow isn't necessarily a word I use, but it's got like a really tight race fit. I mean, you can see the outer of my foot here is maybe spilling a little bit over the side of the platform in this shoe. That does happen. It happened in the Metaspeed Sky Paris as well. Good midfoot lockdown right here at the moment with these sort of slightly offset laces coming back up in. There's nothing to the tongues to offer comfort, but I've got them laced down quite tight. It'll be interesting to see if I have to go tighter on those and how that might affect lace pinch. Really minimal heel collars here, particularly around this, but there's no support. You get this little bit of padding at the back, which is sitting in what I would call the kind of sort of slightly worrying zone there on the Achilles, but we will see how that feels. There's not much to it. But overall, I think lengthwise, this is good for me. There's lots of flex in the toe box here as well from the uppers. So although everything feels a bit narrow, and I definitely describe this as kind of a race hugging fit. My little toe here is quite hemmed in. There is a reasonable amount of wiggle room in terms of sort of up here at the top, but across the toe knuckles, it is all a bit narrow. But that is kind of like a race fit I'd get in the Metaspeed Sky Paris as well.
When it comes to fit of the Asics Metaspeed Ray, I've got my normal size here, which is a UK 9, US 10. It's a size I use for Asics' other shoes as well, including the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo. And I've got a good fit here, enough room around the front of the toes, good hold around the heel and midfoot. It's a very lightweight upper, so you're not really getting much padding or anything like that here, but that was fine for me on the run today. I do think it's a fairly narrow shoe though, and I think if you've got a wide foot around the midfoot, you'll probably hang over the side of this a little bit. I'm not sure how that will feel, but I do have quite a narrow foot, so it's fit me really well, and I have no concerns with it in my normal size.
So then I've just finished my sort of first run in the Asics Metaspeed Ray Tokyo, which I'm now going to call the Ray, because I can't be able to say all of that. I actually did sort of 3 runs in this first outing. So I did like a 3-mile easy warm-up at probably around kind of 8-minute mile pace-ish up to the Ealing mile. I then raced a mile in them, and I'm going to put a video on the channel, just like a race test of the shoes. So go and check that out. I also then just did 10Ks back, and I did that probably around 48 minutes, I think. So a lot of those were marathon pace or around that, maybe some of them even a little bit quicker on the way back to test it. So I've done a real mix here of sort of slow, all out, and your kind of marathon pace cruise in the shoes, probably around about an hour and a half on feet in total. I'm going to start with the comfort. They actually really disappear on the foot. The hold is kind of race hugging. When you first put them on, they do feel a bit narrow, and I was worried about my foot spilling over the platform a bit and it all being a bit narrow from the back of the toes into the midfoot. But actually, it's like a race hugging fit. The uppers do stretch and flex. My little toe was butted up against there a little bit snugly, but now I've been moving in them, that has loosened off. It's maybe a bit squished, but it hasn't been a problem over that hour. Lots of length in the toe box as well, which really helps. When you wiggle your toes, it all flexes and moves really freely, really nicely. In tight corners, I did have a little bit of slipping in the heel. So I was sort of moving, it's almost like you're sliding off the heel platform. The heel platform is quite narrow actually, and there's not much of it because it slopes up really highly. So all of that can feel a little bit like you're swinging the back end of your foot out when you're turning in kind of tight corners. And that sort of happens whether you're moving fast or not. It's obviously accentuated when you're going faster. For the slow and easy, the big surprise to me was just how sort of cushioned and smooth they feel, and actually they're not stable, but they are protective in terms of impact coming up through the road. I think I can go long in these without too much trouble actually. I don't feel too exposed overall when you're running and able to control that kind of sort of midsole wobble. When you start to really punch, what you're getting is a big squish, lots of return, lots of bouncy energy, not dissimilar to like an Incredi run in terms of the way that foam performs underfoot. Excuse me. And then definitely the difference here, I think, between this and the Metaspeed Sky Paris, I've not run in the new sort of Tokyo, is they're sort of softer and more cushioned. There's less of the kind of firmness and the snap that I think you get back from the Metaspeed Skies, which I really quite like for sort of longer distances where it's giving you a bit of punch back and a bit of snap back. This is a bit more kind of bounce back. So although I do find them really smooth, and I found there's a smooth roll through, it's kind of like a cushioned sort of roll through rather than like a snap and a pop. When I got up and went all out on that mile, I found they were giving me the energy. Again, on a slightly twisty turny course, did find they were a little bit unhappy in the corners. You know, you're coming off the platform a bit, there wasn't enough control for those tight turns, and you'd probably want something a little bit lower stack if you're going to run something that's got a really sort of tight angled course. That's the same of the Saucony Endorphins. And then when I came back, I think the time that I found them really happy wasn't all out. It was on that last bit that I did where I was just moving at like anywhere between sort of 6 minutes and sort of 7:10 per mile, which is, you know, my marathon pace right now would probably be around 6:45, 6:50. So we're in that ballpark, but you're just moving in a straight line, ticking over with some consistency and some, you know, just holding that pace, you know, like an even sort of feel to it. And they work really well then. They're really nice and smooth. They don't feel too exposed. eating the road happily. Up on my mid to forefoot, I can feel there's quite that accentuated rocker, and you're getting into that and being moved off quite quickly. And they just felt really light. I mean, the lightweight, that's one thing. I mean, obviously these are 134 grams or something crazy, and that's something the other thing, there's just nothing to them on the foot, and that's a really pleasant feel. But you don't feel super minimal, I don't think. I don't feel exposed like you can in some really lightweight shoes, because you've still got that big slab of cushioning. So there's a mix here overall.
Good morning from London. I'm about to head out in the Asics Metaspeed Ray for my first proper run in the shoe. I did get a chance to do a short run in it at the launch in Tokyo, but this is going to be more of a first proper test. For one, I won't have just run the London Marathon, so my legs are a bit fresher. I'm deep into marathon training, and I'm doing a longish kind of tempo run today. I've got 45 minutes at 3:45 a k on the plan, little warm up and cool down. That should be probably not far off 10 miles in total. See how the shoe feels. Like, it's a pretty wild ride. It's exceptionally light, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it feels today over an extended run. You know, pace isn't too demanding today. I'm doing a lot of miles at the moment, so you never know exactly what kind of pace is going to feel demanding, but I'm hoping to run this with a fairly low HR and feel pretty controlled, so hopefully that's how it will feel, and we'll see how the shoe feels. So all done now. That was very nice and comfy, actually. Yeah, felt really good today. Cruising along. The shoes are undoubtedly very, very springy indeed. They're a lot of fun. They're very lightweight, obviously, and you do feel that on the foot, and you really feel that bounce. They're quite soft to land on, especially like landing at the heel myself, where I don't think there's much of a plate. I don't think there's any plate, actually. And then you roll through, get loads of bounce. Like, heart rate was very low for that. Ran just over 12k in the 45 minutes. And actually, I've done some comparable stuff recently in other shoes where I've been, done stretches at 3:45 a k, including in the Asics Metaspeed Sky Tokyo. It wasn't like directly comparable because that was during the longer run and it was on not such a good surface, but the heart rate was probably kind of low 140s, high 130s in that shoe for 3:45 a k pace. I did 10k at 3:45 in the Endorphin Speed 5 at the start of a long session a while back, and heart rate was pretty more mid 140s, and today it was mid 130s. So that's all very good. It felt very bouncy. Feels like it's going to be a good shoe, but there are certainly question marks about how stable it is and how soft it is. And towards the end of that run today, where cardiovascularly I was in a good place, like wasn't really feeling it at all, but my legs were a bit tired because I've done quite a lot of miles this week. In general, I'm doing a lot of miles for marathon training, so you expect your legs to be a bit tired. And that's when, if you hit a slight angle in a road, even, you really feel like the shoe moving a bit underfoot or pushing you to the side a bit, because it's a high stack of very soft foam, so you really do feel the lumps and bumps in the road. Like, you're on dead flat, proper tarmac in a race, not going to be a problem, I think, even as you tire. But at any kind of rogue surface, when your legs start to tire a little bit, you do have to try and focus and try and keep them strong to avoid being moved over a bit. Like, a little bit of pronation, that kind of thing, just isn't really a problem, I don't think. It's just a little bit of ankle flexibility and all that. It's not a major concern in a race day shoe like this, but at the end of a long race or a long session, if you are starting to lose a bit too much in terms of wobbliness, then maybe it wouldn't actually be as effective as a kind of firmer shoe. But yeah, a lot of fun today. Very cruisy, felt controlled. We'll take some faster stuff next week to really get a bit more info on the shoe, and hopefully we'll also be able to test the Edge Tokyo against it as well. So yeah, looking forward to doing more running it, but that was very fun. First run in the Metaspeed Ray.
So my first run was actually a track session, a delayed track session I was meant to do a couple of days ago, a kind of 10k kind of race focus session. That's the next race I've got, the Asics London 10k at the end of the month. So I had 10 times 500 meters to do, 2-minute recoveries. I had a 10-minute warm up as well before that, and I actually kept this shoe on for that kind of warm up, and it kind of was a good kind of sign to tell me that this isn't a shoe to ease off. It's not a shoe to kind of do slower kind of easy runs in. It is built for racing, and it kind of introduced me to that kind of more unstable feel that you are going to get when you ease off in this, and you particularly kind of feel that, or I felt that in the heel of the shoe. Obviously there is a huge amount of this FF Leap kind of foam, which is really soft and squidgy. We were starting to see the Metaspeed Ray do kind of soften up a little bit more compared to previous shoes, but this is just another level in terms of that squidginess. Kind of the closest I'd probably say to another shoe is probably Saucony Endorphin Elite 2, but even then I feel like this is probably, they're putting a lot more of that kind of squidgy, kind of soft plush foam underneath your foot. Now, as I said, I was trying to kind of stick to kind of round about my 10k pace in those reps, and when I did, that unstable feeling kind of disappeared really, and what replaced it was something that I just it felt enjoyable to run. It felt bouncy, it felt lively, it felt fast. I didn't, feel like I was out of control in the shoe, and it didn't feel awkward like it did in that kind of warm up kind of part of my session. And then it just felt good to run in the shoe. I think the key thing for me is that I didn't feel like it was really beating my legs up in that session. I think rep after rep, and even to the last one, I didn't feel like it was hard work to kind of do or kind of stick to around that pace. And yeah, it definitely does remind me a little bit of the Elite 2 and what I felt. And I've done a similar track session with the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2 to what I did with the Ray today. But I just felt like it rolled through a little bit nicer than the Endorphin Elite 2. I think that's helped by the fact that it is super light. I think that makes a huge difference in a racing shoe where you've just not got a huge amount of material there. That does mean you're not getting a huge amount of protection and support. And maybe says to me, this is a shoe that I would probably prefer running shorter distances in. I think that kind of stability kind of thing that I've kind of seen in, in that kind of warm-up session, I have a habit of kind of, if I tire off in a kind of longer kind of race pace kind of focus session, is this going to be a shoe that's going to feel awkward to run in? And that's really what I want to find out in kind of deeper testing. But at that kind of shorter kind of running, running at my 10k pace, it felt okay to do that. And I felt I can kind of contain and sustain that pace in the shoe without feeling like it was working against me. And I think, yeah, it felt good, it felt fast, it felt lively, and it felt like I wanted to feel I've seen with the previous Metaspeed shoes, but it almost amps up that feeling and also does it from a significantly lighter shoe. Another thing I'd probably talk about is the outsole. The Metaspeed Ray is not known for having great outsoles on them. There's not a huge amount of rubber here. It's kind of that Asics grip kind of design that we've seen before. And you can probably see from the profile, not a lot there protecting. Fine on a track, a dry track, a lot of exposed areas, and it's already getting beaten up by the track, you can see. Doesn't scream like a shoe that's going to have a huge amount of durability. Feels like you really are going to save this shoe for racing. What kind of racing that should be, that's still something to work out. But what I can say, that track session felt very good. Enjoyed running in the Metaspeed Ray. Definitely looking forward to spending more time in this shoe. So some initial thoughts on the Asics Metaspeed Ray. It feels fun, it feels fast, bouncy, and absolutely this is a lovely lightweight shoe to where I was in that first run. Do I think this is going to be the racing shoe for everyone? I don't think so. I think, just from those kind of little things around the stability side of things, I think, it's not going to be a shoe that's going to work for everyone. I think unless your technique and form is absolutely spot on and you're racing, then I think, that it could cause some problems for some people. I think, again, the one thing I'd want to see, is this going to be a shoe I want to run or race longer in, kind of half marathon distance? It's kind of screaming short distance racer for me, but I think for a lot of runners, who are running considerably quicker than me, they're absolutely going to feel they can get something out of the shoe over those longer distances. All I can say is I've liked it so far. Obviously, I've only done a track session with it. I want to see how it manages on the road. I want to race in it as well, and I'm planning to use this for the Asics London 10k later in August, so I'll get a sense of that. But so far I can see there's a lot of excitement about this shoe. It does feel fun to run in, and I enjoyed it in that first run. I just think it's not necessarily going to be a racing shoe that every runner is going to get on with, and I'm still got some question marks on whether it's going to be necessarily a long distance racer, particularly for someone like me, my racing or running paces, but also for a lot of runners as well who might get more out of it over those shorter distances.
So obviously very early verdict on the Metaspeed Ray. Going to go and get out and do some flat out running in it next week, hopefully, to get more of a test into it. But that was a very cruisy tempo run today, and my heart rate was lower than I expected. Even then I expected, I thought I'd be in pretty good control today, but I was surprised at the numbers putting out and how easy it felt to roll along at that pace. So yeah, really springy shoe, lots of fun, very light, definitely some concerns about stability. Be interesting to see how I feel about the lack of a full length plate as someone who does land at the heel. When it comes to really hard sessions when I'm really pushing myself throughout, and whether I feel like maybe you get a bit more from a shoe with a full length plate, but the lightness might counteract that a little bit as well. So yeah, enjoyed that first run. Interesting shoe for sure. Looking forward to getting at it again. The price is Quite interesting as well, because when we've seen these super lightweight shoes before, it's been things like the Adidas Pro Evo 2, which have been priced prohibitively highly, whereas this is only a little bit more expensive than the standard Asics racing shoe. So it'll be interesting to see whether it looks like a cut above or maybe just another option in the range, which is where I was kind of thinking about it when I did my very first run in it out in Tokyo, because it's got a different feel, very soft feel, very bouncy feel. I think that some runners will really, really like, but maybe it won't necessarily be just a flat out better shoe than the Sky Tokyo and Edge Tokyo, but a different option, which is a little bit pricier, but not so much that it feels completely out of bounds to you like the Pro Evo 2 can do a little bit, I think. So yeah, fun first run, looking forward to getting out in it again.
First impressions then, I've covered a lot of it off in there, so I'm just going to give you a very quick summary. But I think these shoes have been good so far to run in. I really enjoyed them best when I was moving around marathon pace. I didn't think I was going to. I thought I'd want them for something slightly shorter and faster, but actually over the mile, I think I'd want something that's a bit closer to the ground, a bit better in the corners. Energy-wise, I think they are giving it. I'm not sure if I would prefer this chasing a marathon PB to the Metaspeed Sky Paris, because I do like something that's got a little bit of firmness in it. Something, that plate is giving you a little bit of control and a little bit of guidance, and I don't know, it just gives you a bit of snapback, and it's a different ride in these shoes. It's not to say I haven't enjoyed it, because I have, and I found them very, very competent in that last 10k. And in my head, I don't know why I've got that as a really good kind of fast marathon, long training run cruising shoe. Obviously going to be doing more testing, doing more miles. I really want to see what they feel like if you go over 2 hours in them, to see, is this a marathon shoe that you'd use? I have to confess, before I sort of finish off this as well, I haven't really read up on the Ray. I don't really know what Asics has in mind for this shoe, so I've gone out with a blank, and that's where I've got to at the moment, is that I think it could be a brilliant kind of half marathon shoe when you're able to run in long straight lines in a sort of urban city marathon, or you want to go out and run faster miles in a big sort of high pace or interval marathon training run.
That's our first look at the Asics Metaspeed Ray. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.